Farseer trilogy, in terms of how dragons are represented, those were not real dragons.
Sorry, one more time. That's a real cat, though. Hi, we're the Book Mavens. I'm Amanda, she's Rachel, and you're joining us for the Summer of Hobb Reading Challenge. We're reading all 16 of Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderling series. We're in book 5 of the complete series, which is the second book in the Liveship Traders Trilogy. Yay! Okay. Rachel, tell us about the Mad Ship.
The Mad Ship. So at the end of Ship of Magic, that's right, book 1 to the Liveship Traders Trilogy, there are a lot of decisions being made regarding Vivacia and her decision whether or not to go with Captain Kennett, who is kind of trying to set himself up as king of the pirates, whether or not she is going to go rogue and become a pirate ship. She would be the first, second live ship to turn to piracy. And Kennett is doing his best to kind of woo her to his side, which is very interesting. Of course, Wintrow is along for the ride, as he is a necessary part of Vivacia to continue to function. However, in the Mad Ship, we learn a lot more about the serpents, the live ships, and dragons.
Dragons.
Okay. All right.
And the elements. Okay, so we usually record in the afternoon.
This is a night recording for us.
It's
been a long day. All right.
So in the
Farseer trilogy.
In the Farseer trilogy,
dragons, in terms of how they talked about it, we didn't really get a clear picture of who the Elderlings were. Verity insinuated that the dragons were somehow the Elderlings, but we do know that when Fitz goes to that city, very similar to what we see happening in the old city in the Rainwild area, that you touch certain areas and you can see past events. So these people that we're seeing, these kind of ghosts that we also see in the Rainwild region in the Liveship Traders books, that those are the Elderlings. So they are some long ago race of humanoid people, we assume, that had a connection with real dragons. So the dragons that we actually see that Verity carves out of rocks, they call them like simulacras. And so they're false dragons. So that's why they were able to create them and make them kind of all these other shapes, like the really freaky girl who rides the dragon, which was horrifying. So those are not real dragons. So thank goodness, because Robin Hobb burned me on the dragon. So we know in the Liveship Traders trilogy, we are introduced to the real dragons and their actual connection with the Elderlings, in which they absolutely had a symbiotic relationship. But what's really interesting about dragons is how they're introduced. This is totally unique. This is something I've not seen done. Since Robin Hobb doesn't really rely on any kind of elaborate magic system, everything about these kind of connections, either among people or with these objects like the live ships, and their connection with the dragons, it's just very, very interesting. So since the first book, we were introduced to these serpents, and these serpents where one had memories of previous lives, and so they emit poisons and toxins, and they, in their tangle, which is all of them living together, they can emit these poisons, and it will cause these memories to flash to the surface for these other serpents. So they become less serpent-like and more intelligent beings. And they're struggling to find she who remembers. And they think it's Vivacia, the ship, but it's not. When we find out the connection with the live ships, it's very interesting that these serpents, part of their this big metamorphosis that happens, that they travel upriver into the Rainwild and build a cocoon, and their cocoon is the material that they're making the live ships out of. So the live ships aren't really alive, which is interesting. And so what ends up happening is that when they're ready in this cocoon that they're in, they're brought out into the light, and then they hatch, but then they absorb all of that wizard wood, which is what they were calling it, into themselves, and that holds all their memories of their species and previous lives, and then they come out as a dragon. And so cool, and such an interesting way, and such a really just fascinating tie-in to everything. But what I find most, I guess, sad in a way is that these live ships are not alive. They have, what ended up happening is that the Rainwild traders just split them open and let these, what they thought were dead dragons, these bodies just pour out, and then they harvested the wood. And so what they're doing is, by insisting that you have 3 generations die aboard the ship on this wizard wood, or this cocoon substance, that it kind of replaces or blocks those dragon memories and those serpent memories, and replaces them with family memories, which is so sad. So really, these are dead dragon memories. So they're not live ships, they're dead ships.
It's really kind of tragic.
It is tragic.
The live ship in the book is Paragon. And Paragon is the one that we mentioned very briefly last video. Is they get him back in the water. Amber, the fool, manages to buy Paragon from his family, which was a whole big deal in and of itself because it broke all kinds of traditions and protocol. And Paragon is back in the water. So Paragon is sailing. Brashen is his captain, and Althea is on there as the second mate, because the idea is that when they get to the Vivacia, Althea will leave Paragon and step onto Vivacia as Vivacia's captain. Now, Paragon, wow, he's got a lot of stuff going on. So it takes a very long time in the book. Like, he is the mad ship, so he is a huge focus in this book and his story. And there are things that he refuses to remember, and there's just all this tragedy that surrounds him.
To remember, or just doesn't want to talk about it.
I think he doesn't want to. I think it is intentional. Like, he intentionally doesn't allow himself to remember. Like, I don't think he's just not telling. I think he intentionally won't let himself go there.
But there's a duality to Paragon. He has a childlike personality and a mature man's personality that also has a temper. And so depending on what's happening,
who's prevailing,
he cries a lot.
I feel
He's very sensitive.
The school year was tough.
Yes. And
he says that. He says there's 2. There are 2 of us. He tries to get Amber. I think it's so funny that Amber, who's really the fool, and that becomes, I think Rachel was so right about that, because it just becomes, there's even more clues in this book. Yes. But he's trying to tell Amber that there's 2 of us in here, and she's just kind of obtusely not understanding what he's saying.
I think she's trying to figure out what's happening, and I don't think that she's ready for him to make that kind of reveal quite yet. It doesn't fit in, I think, with her, how she is seeing fate play this hand at this current time. I don't think it's ready for it to be revealed yet.
I think it's coming.
I'm pretty certain that the Ludlucks who own Paragon, that Kennett is a Ludluck. I am 99% sure.
So you're projecting that Kennett is a Ludluck. Okay, so...
Because something happens with Kennett, because they talk about it. He also had something burned off of him. I think that he had the same mark that Paragon had on his chest that he asked Amber to take off.
Well, let's talk about Kennett.
But I think those memories of that little boy, that's Kennett.
You think?
I think so. I don't think he lost his whole family. I think his mother and his father, they ended up on this separate island. I think there's a whole other backstory to Kennett that we haven't gotten, and he's connected to the Paragon. Because he just knows so much about live ships. Nothing about live ships really surprised him. There's a familiarity.
Well, he doesn't let himself get surprised by much either, though. But Kennett is a very complicated character.
Very, very complicated.
Kennett is, okay, I'll admit, guys, I don't really and never fully have understood the allure of pirates. Don't come for me in the comments. Okay? I don't really.
Oh, I love it.
I don't really get it. It's just not my particular cup of tea. Right? Like, I just don't understand the appeal. I like order. I like law. I like people not stealing from each other. I mean, I've never really fully understood the romanticized nature of pirates. But, you know, to each their own. So Kenneth is a difficult character for me on many levels because he is so gray. And you and I have talked about this a number of times as we go through the book. Kenneth he does do good things. Yeah. Occasionally. He does do good things, but he's doing them it's the motivations to me that he does them for these very self-serving reasons. And that is difficult because you're privy to his inner thoughts. And then you're also seeing how it's perceived by the people around him. Like, he has this loyalty of Etta and eventually Winthrop. Mm-hmm. And he has their loyalty, and they make a lot of sacrifices for him. They fight for him. And he is so manipulative that I just have a hard time with Kenneth. But I'm enjoying the journey. I'm enjoying reading about Kenneth. Like, I'm enjoying this tale. I mean, there are moments where I'm like, okay, I don't like that. But, you know, he's very gray. He's very complex.
I don't think he's really that gray, because when talking about him wanting to become king of the pirates, he talks about power, but like when that town is destroyed and he goes in there, he has built all of these plans for these towns to be successful.
Yeah, but he even says when he's talking to the Charm, he's like, the Charm's like, why did you do this? He's like, I just do. He likes to be in control.
But it's for the benefit of these people. He's a leader. He's a natural born leader.
Just because it benefits them later.
It would have benefited them before they were raided. Had they done what he said.
That's true. And maybe it would have. But on the other hand, like
you don't know what his end goal is.
Other than to be the king of the pirates?
But I don't think it's just about becoming king. I think he sees a plan to organize this and have it function and be accepted, that piracy is the short game. He's looking at the long game.
Maybe, but I
Kenneth
still
has a whole, yeah.
I agree that there's probably things we don't know about his long game, but I'm saying, like,
I don't think he's lily white. Don't get me wrong.
He is,
but I think he's really complicated.
I think he's very. You and I have talked about this before a lot. You think that he's like, and I think Amber eventually will think this too, that he's this big, you know, he's a catalyst. He's a big change maker, and maybe that's true. But I just think it's an interesting, like.
Well, he's not as sympathetic a character as somebody like Fitz.
He is an interesting. He is interesting to think about, because which is more important, the outcomes or the motivations of the actor? Like, some leaders are good leaders for altruistic reasons, and some leaders are good leaders because of the way they make people think.
Well, he knows what needs to get done,
even if they're doing it for their own glory.
But does it matter in the long run?
I just find his approach to Vivacia and Winthrop and even Etta, like, I find him so manipulative in this book, particularly in the beginning, that I just have a hard time with him. I mean,
I like him.
I don't think I do, but we'll see.
I like him. I think there's a lot more to be revealed about Kenneth that, you know, and I really honestly think that what he's trying to do, especially, I think he did both Etta and Winthrop a tremendous favor by throwing them together. Even though there's no real romantic interest at all, from Etta's side for Winthrop, but this friendship, he teaches her to read. This is a skill that she values so much, and she teaches him how to defend himself. It is a good thing,
and that's what I'm saying, is like, there's a good outcome, but it's not his intent. His intent was to get a child with Winthrop's bloodline so that then he could get rid of Winthrop and just keep the child. Like, that's a terrible motivation. Just because the outcome turned out better than he'd hoped, like turned out okay, doesn't negate the ickiness of what he was doing.
It didn't really ever sit well with the idea of Etta having a sexual relationship with Winthrop.
That's because he's
conflicted
selfish
about it. I don't really.
I think it is. I think he cares for Etta in the sense that he realizes he feels like he doesn't name it as love or affection the way a normal person would. He thinks he has control over her.
Well, I think this is his way of dealing with emotions he doesn't quite know how to handle. Like, I think he's complex.
I do think he's complex, and I just don't.
I think there's more to him.
Yeah, you tip over in the like, I tip over in the. I don't think.
I like a good complex character, and I love a morally gray character. That is something that I really.
See, I don't know that I would classify myself as loving morally gray.
Oh no, I
characters.
do. I do because I like characters who are inherently flawed.
I think flaws and weakness are realistic. I think that's true.
But that's like, I don't want to bring up comic books, but like comic books, like you can speak all day about characters like Superman and Captain America because they are so morally rigid, but it doesn't make for an interesting storyline for very long.
You named two of my favorites.
I know, but you look at characters like Batman who constantly has to fight against this inner darkness and always maintains this rigidity in terms of his morality. He's not going to kill if you go to the original Batman. Like all of those things, but there's so much gray area when you're looking at a vigilante, somebody who's taking the law into their own hands and doing what they think is justified. So Batman's an incredibly compelling character compared to Superman. Just is. You're going to enjoy reading Batman's story more than you're going to end up reading
I think you
Captain
enjoy
America's.
reading it more.
The Boy Scout character only goes so far.
To you?
To me.
Tell us in the comments. What do you think? If you're reading along with us, what are your thoughts on Kenneth right now? If you have already read the series, tell us what you think of Kenneth, but don't spoil it for us because we're going into the third book this week.
Yeah,
and we are excited. But let us know in the comments what do you think about Kenneth.
We're good. We have different opinions.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah. Like Althea, there's a lot with her in the second book. And her being second mate under Brashen on the Paragon, like there are distinct reasons why he chose her for that position. A lot of it has to do with Althea. She comes to a lot of realizations about herself in the second book. I shouldn't hold up the third one while I talk about it. In this one, that she still has doubts about herself. She has become assured in terms of her relationship with Greg that she does not want to just be someone's wife. She does not want to sit on the shore and have children and that be it. She really wants to be able to run her own ship, but I think she still lacks confidence in terms of her ability to do so and to be able to kind of preside over a large group of men.
But I think she's really starting to get that second mate. Like she's really proving to herself that she is capable.
Well, Brashen, they all have a hard time getting a crew together to even man Paragon because he is known as a mad ship and he does all kinds of cuckoo stuff
he doesn't help when they're refitting him. He whispers threats to them while they're thinking. Yeah, he's always whispering stuff like "You'll be dead by sunset,"
and his anxiety feeds their anxiety.
Yeah,
he infects the crew that way, and so they have a hard time keeping a crew. But they have a lot of really unsavory characters on this boat. There's an attempted rape on Althea, but she manages to get away, not only get away, but to fight back. And I think she proves something to herself that she is a capable woman and can face her fears and do what needs to be done. And I think that's a really big realization for her character. So I didn't want to leave that out because that, I think, was really significant in terms of who she wants to be, right? So let's talk about Vivacia. We talked a little bit about her already.
Vivacia. For me, the first book and the second book blurred a little bit. She's so tragic for me. She's just so distraught because she's young and she's first quickened and she doesn't understand why Winter doesn't want her bond and where Althea is and Kyle's a jerk. Like, she doesn't understand. And then in this book, I get so flustered with her a little bit because...
Okay, well,
she's complicated.
Althea is a lot of the women in this second book. You can talk about Kefria, Malta, Ronica, and Althea, that they're all becoming their own people and they're learning their limitations. They're learning about their expectations for themselves. And so you see, to me, this whole trilogy is about metamorphosis. So these women are coming into their own. So Kefria, you see, is making her own decisions. She's becoming a mover and shaker as opposed to looking at Kyle Haven because Kyle Haven's gone. he's locked up in Kenneth's mother's cellar, so to rot. We don't really know. At the end of the
tale to tell.
He's just there. So these women are standing on their own. Ronica no longer has Ephron. Yes. That he's passed. So she has taken on this leadership position in her family, and she's good at it. She's really good. She's a lot more clever than you give her credit for, especially in the beginning of the first book, where she makes a lot of really bad calls regarding Bibasia and Althea. So you see that she's really thinking for herself. Malta, who started off as a
she's
horrible character.
I'm coming around on Malta. Now it's taken a while.
Malta's shown some growth. And I have really enjoyed reading her sections of the book, though.
Do you know the moments so Malta, the moment for me when I was like, was when she was having an argument with the Rainwild trader. What's his name?
Rain.
Okay. Malta's having an argument with Rain, and she recognizes, she says, I'm turning his words against him, the way my father argues with my mother. But then she says, but I don't know how to stop. That was like a maturity growth moment. That recognition I had been waiting for since the second book, like, because she spent most of the first book so absorbed, and I know she's a child, but like she could not even conceive of the value that these other women had around her. And I think that those relationships have grown in this second book. She's matured a lot, and she's had to make a lot of sacrifices, and she's done it. Her father going missing was the turning point for her when she recognized...
Best thing that could have happened to her.
Yeah, she recognizes that there are serious things happening, and there are serious things that must happen. And her understanding of these romantic relationships that
and long-term consequences.
Yeah, she'd been so actively pursuing. She realizes, she's like, wow, these men are all talk, or, a lot of maturing. I think you really pegged it when you said that this is about metamorphosis.
Yes, there's a lot of change. I mean, but we even had that with the Farseer trilogy, this idea of catalysts being there to cause change. But, I mean, Robin Hobb was very, very good in terms of writing women in this book. That perspective comes across very strongly, to see these women come into their own. And Althea realizing that Greg, who is a very, very nice man. There's nothing wrong with him. He's going to be captain of the Ophelia, which is another live ship, who speaks to me in the voice of Dolly Parton when I read her. She does.
My girl Dolly.
She does. And, wants to help her. They want change. Bingtown, in particular, going through tremendous political upheaval in terms of whether or not to establish themselves as kind of this independently run country or statehood.
Be independent.
Yes. Outside of Jamalia, because Jamalia, of course, is bringing in
They're allowing
slavery, and that's just not okay with them. But it's also these Newtown traders. There's a lot of change happening within Bingtown that's upsetting the kind of old traders.
The balance.
As well as their relationship with the Rainwild people. And the Rainwild, now we get to go in there. We get to see what that's like. They have a really cool city that's it reminds me a little bit of like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Any of you people who have seen that with Kevin Costner? Like the cities are all in the trees, and so they have all of these walkways. Yeah, so the whole city is above ground because the rest of it's like a swamp. And so the old city with the Elderlings is like
Ewoks from.
That works too. Just any tree dwelling story. Yeah, we got you have the Elderlings. Their old cities under there. Rain has been exploring all of that. Which ties into our discoveries regarding the live ships and Wizardwood, what it really is, which is tragic. You have like the last dragon communicating with Rain from inside her cocoon, just trapped in there, and you can feel that claustrophobia. She writes it very well. I'm like, oh God, just get her out, and he can't figure out a way. It's this huge, immense log. And it's underground. So to try and get it out, nobody believes that he's hearing this. Nobody wants to give any kind of credit because I think they'd feel bad because they literally just murdered all of these dragons. And I think it makes them feel better. There's a lot of thought behind that. They're all dead.
I think his mom knows. She just doesn't want anybody else to know.
Because it would really upset everything.
Yeah.
What they've been doing there. But, Malta ends up through that dream connection with Rain, ends up being tied to this trapped dragon and is hearing her voice in her head as well, and is being drawn to that lower city. And then of course at the end of the book there's a horrible quake and they end up kind of trapped under the city and trying to get out. So Robin Hobb writes her trilogies where they just, like we were talking about it, like her editor just says, okay, you've reached your page limit, just go ahead and stop. There's no conclusion.
Yeah,
it just goes right into the next one.
That's made the video portion of this project a lot trickier because there's not really clean cut stories. They're all just like continuations of each other.
Make this like a dessert book. This was really something really, really rich and flavorful. Chocolatey, like a chocolate lava cake or something like really intense.
Chocolate lava cake?
That's how I'm feeling about this book. There's just a lot going on. There's complex flavors, maybe like a Mexican chocolate one, a little heat to it maybe. Yeah, something just an above level chocolate lava cake in some way.
I'm rating this book as a large bucket of movie popcorn. You smell it as soon as you get there. You're excited. I knew from the first book that I was going to be here for the second book. I'm excited. I've shown up. It smells delicious. And then and it's never quite the same when you try to make it at your house. You're just here for it. It's an adventure story. You keep snacking. You don't even realize how much you've eaten. So tell us in the comments how you would rate this book. If you read it before, drop it below. If this convinces you that it's a movie butter popcorn or a chocolate lava cake book and you decided to read it, let us know in the comments.
Let us know. Let Albus know as well.
All right. Join us next week when we'll be discussing Ship of Destiny, the final installment in the Liveship Traders Trilogy.
Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed our video, and stay tuned for next week's release, and we'll see you then. Bye.
You said bye now.
I said bye now.
Never said bye now.
I've never said bye now. I feel like an 80-year-old man. Bye now.
Destiny. It will be our destiny to finish this video.
Yes.